Dwayne is hiding in the basket.
Parasite. And you don't have...
Well, it'll be a great vacation for you. Arizona, Death Valley.
It's one of the most spectacular sights in the whole world.
So is Central Park.
You're welcome, Billy.
Anybody home?
You know, Earl and I pulled an RV out of there this afternoon. 3 people in it, cut up. Just like the others we found over the years.
I told you I never wanted to see you in these parts again, Black Bart. Else I'll blow you away.
Good night, Billy. I hate you.
I hate you too.
I hate you 3.
Have a terrible time.
My son is missing.
Come on, how did you get out of the Peterson place? Tell us. What do you want to go out there for?
Because he's got my son.
Just tell us how to get out there.
Oh, where have you been? Billy boy, Billy boy.
Billy! Oh. He's out there! He's out there! Darling! Run, Billy, run!
Hi, this is Laura Park Lincoln from Friday the 13th, Part 7, and you're listening to The Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back to The Hysteria Continues. And I think, if I am remembering correctly, we're up to episode 253. And this time, what a better time of the year than the cold, cold months of February to be heading to Death Valley. Let's see if this 1982 slasher, the kind of slasher combo of, it's kind of like Kramer versus Kramer combined with Friday the 13th. Death Valley. This was your choice, Eric, was it not?
It was my choice, yes.
Well, we're going to see if we get worked up on this one a little bit later. But yeah, it's been one that's been on the cards for a long time. So looking forward to covering that. So how are you doing, Eric? Are you okay?
I'm doing good. I'm actually really surprised because I went for a walk this morning. I was listening to a film podcast, Mark Kermode and Simon Mayo. Simon Mayo was interviewing Guillermo del Toro. Oh no, they're discussing Guillermo del Toro's new movie. Is it called Nightmare Alley? And I heard this little snippet.
It has a fantastic score by Nathan Johnson, who incidentally stepped into the role very late in the day.
Fantastic score by Nathan Johnson. Nathan.
I worked really hard on it.
I know, and you kept it quiet. I had no idea. Congratulations, Nathan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, you know, I did my own music for my movies back in the 90s.
Yes, from Humble Acorns, yes.
You mean After Midnight did all your music for you and you just pilfered it?
Well, I still used it.
So anyway, well, thank you, Eric. Well, Nathan, how are you doing this fine day?
I'm doing all right. I've been awake for about 20 minutes.
Okay.
So there you go.
You're sounding very peppy.
I've had my coffee, or I'm still drinking it.
That's good. And are you full of coffee, Joseph?
No, I'm still half asleep as well. It is so cold here. It's like insane.
Is it snowy?
No, it's not snowy. It's just very cold. And when it's very cold, I tend to want to sleep a lot. So I'm half in, half out today.
Okay, well, let's have a little chat about what we've been watching recently, because we haven't actually recorded a main show for a few weeks, well, as usual. But, well, Nathan, how about you? What have you been catching up with?
I did watch Scream 5. I don't know if I mentioned it last time or not. I think last time I mentioned I was going to see it.
That's right, yes.
So, yeah, I watched Scream 5, and I loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was... you know, it's always great to see the cast back again. You know, it was funny because a friend of mine was talking to me and he was like, I wonder if any of the main cast will die in this one because it's kind of unrealistic that they survived already. And I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, you don't think it was unrealistic that they've survived all the movies they've survived to begin with? But the movie itself was very good. I'm looking forward to Scream 6. I can't say too much about it because I don't want to spoil anything. Because I don't think you and Eric have seen it yet. Am I right?
No, it hasn't been released in Dublin and it's not out streaming yet.
Okay, well, I'll save any, you know, specific kind of reviewing for it for after you guys have seen it. But yeah, I liked it. So
Cool. Any idea when it is going to streaming? Because I did hear rumours it might be going to streaming quite soon.
I think they said 45 days or 55 after it was released. I think in March it will be ready for streaming.
Well, we shall catch it then and discuss it further. So, well, thank you, Nathan. Anything else?
No, I'm going to watch VHS 94, but I didn't get a chance to last night. But I do really, really want to watch it. You watched it, didn't you, Joseph?
Yeah, and it's not bad. It's pretty much more of the same.
But you said some stories were pretty good, right?
Yeah, well, if I'm remembering correctly, I think the first 2 stories are really good, and the last one's just kind of so-so, with the wraparound being so-so as well. But what I liked about this one is that it's the first in the series that actually has a reason to be called VHS, because it's the tapes that they're watching are from the early to mid 90s, so naturally they would be on VHS. So yeah, it's about on a par with VHS 2. Certainly better than 3, I would say.
All right. Is 3 VHS viral?
That's correct.
Oh, that's your quiz voice.
It is. I was just thinking the exact same thing.
That is. Hey, I got
a
it right.
point. Yeah, Eric lost.
No.
Well, thank you, Nathan. Eric, how about you?
Okay, I've been catching up on, we're doing our top 3 of 1998 towards the end of the month for Patreon, so I've been watching lots of 1998 films, so I won't mention what they are just yet. But the one other one I saw it's a film I've been meaning to watch for a long time. I'm not sure how you say it. It's either Contamination 7 or Contamination .7 or Contamination.7, I'm not sure. It's also known as The Crawlers. It's an Italian film from Fabrizio Laurenti, who did Ghost House 2, which is also known as Witchery, I think. It's the one with David Hasselhoff and Linda Blair. So that kind of gives you an indication of what to expect with this one. And there's also uncredited co-direction from Joe D'Amato as well. So this is a horror film about killer trees, or to be more specific, killer tree roots. So it's kind of taking the short sequence from The Evil Dead and expanding it to feature length. So here the trees have turned evil because baddies from the nearby nuclear power plant have been burying toxic waste in the forest. The film had a release date on some sites says 1993, but it has others say it's 1990, which I think is probably more correct because it has that kind of look to it. The production values are very much on a par with Troll 2, which makes me think it's probably was filmed in 89 or 90. And incidentally, the film was released in some territories as Troll 3. Now, Troll 2 obviously doesn't have any trolls in it, but it's closer to having trolls in it than this one does. This one doesn't have 2 trolls to rub together. In fact, I mean, a film about killer trees called Troll 3. I'm not sure what they were thinking, but anyway, like with Troll 2, no money has been spent at all on proper actors in this one beyond maybe the main 3 or 4 stars. It has Mary Sellers, who was she was in Stage Fright. She was the girl that gets killed in the shower cubicle. And she was also in Ghost House and 11 Days, 11 Nights. And her co-star is I think he's an American actor. His name is Jason Saucier. And I think that would be a surname that would suit me. Eric Saucier, because I'm saucier than everyone else. But in the background, you have this range of acting talent that looks like they've all stepped off the set of Axum. They really are quite atrocious. The film is fun. It's not as much fun as Troll 2. I mean, the killer roots are fun when they're on screen. I mean, the ending is hilarious, where there's just this big melee of townsfolk all being simultaneously attacked, and it's kind of funny because some of it is kind of very hokey. There's also a cameo by the world's worst miniature bulldozer. I'm talking real sort of, they got it for 25p in a Lucky Bag or Lucky Dip or something. And there's also a Jaws 2 moment where the Roots bring down a helicopter, which was kind of fun. And there's one really gory moment in where a tree root goes into a guy's mouth and then pops out of his eye socket, which it was one for the gore hounds. So yeah, it's good, goofy fun. I would recommend it. Don't expect it to be as good as Troll 2, but expect it to be along the lines of Troll 2. So has anyone else seen this one?
I have.
And?
Oh, I love it. I used to. I think I got this off of alt horror in the 90s, like an old dub, and that's where I first saw it, and I fell in love with it. I think it's just a lot of fun.
It is. It's very stupid, but that's a good thing.
I've never even heard of it, I don't think. What about you, Nathan?
I don't think I've heard of it either, but it sounds like it's amazing. What's it called again?
It's called either Contamination 7 or Contamination .7.
It's best known as Crawlers. That's the title I saw it under.
No, I haven't seen Crawlers, but I do remember the artwork for it. It's like a woman like in the forest, and there's a bunch of limbs wrapped around her.
Yeah, that's the movie.
That'd be the one.
Cool. Excellent. Anything else, Eric?
No, just lots of 98 films that I can't talk about because they're top secret.
Well, thank you. What about you, Joseph?
Well, not a horror movie, but certainly close enough to talk about. I watched Arc, that's ARQ, or Arcing Recursive Quine, which tells the story of this near future world where all of the Earth's resources have kind of been depleted and the atmosphere has become unbreathable without oxygen masks. And the central focus of the story is a guy who's he's constructed this perpetual motion machine that will apparently solve all the world's current energy problems, but the machine is tampered with during a home invasion scenario. And so then he finds himself stuck in this kind of Groundhog Day style time loop with a group of scavengers trying to kill him and his ex-girlfriend. So with each, I guess, iteration of the loop, he learns just enough information to compile this sort of this mosaic of details that will help him and his girlfriend escape the loop. But there's a few surprises in store. So yeah, I watched this without knowing a single thing about it. I caught it on Netflix late at night, and I have to say I really loved it. It applies some really clever twists to that stuck in a time loop shtick, including being self-contained within one location for 97-ish% of the film. It also deals with kind of like themes of loneliness and change, and I can get layers them with some really nail-biting moments of suspense. The time loop stuff, it's your usual concoction of all this pseudo-scientific mumbo-jumbo, but the internal logic concerning the loop itself is pretty solid, and it ties in fairly consistently with, I guess, how a perpetual motion machine might work. I don't know how that would work, but it stays within the boundaries of actual science for the most part, just stretching it out for dramatic purposes. It's not a showcase for the best acting possible, but it looks amazing. It has a really high budget gloss on a milk and cookie budget, and I don't really know what else to say except it consistently had me second guessing myself, and it ends with a real whopper of a reveal, which I wouldn't dare spoil, but I absolutely loved it. It's one of the better time loop films I've seen, certainly a huge surprise. And I don't know, sometimes you get lucky and discover something special without even looking, and I think Arc definitely applies here. I think I told you guys about it. Did any of you guys catch it? Eric?
Not yet, no, but it does sound like something I would very much like, because I love Happy Death Day, and I loved Edge of Tomorrow, and what was the Spanish one we used to like as well?
Time Crimes?
That's it. Yeah, love all those.
Yeah, and then you also have one we always talk about, Triangle.
Oh,
which,
yes.
Throws that in there as well. I mean, this one's, this one's really good. I mean, I think you'd really like it, Eric. It's kind of sci-fi-ish, but it's more kind of Mad Max style sci-fi-ish.
Ooh,
it's really, really good. I highly recommend it.
Year?
Justin?
I presume it's fairly recent, is it?
Yeah, it's 2016. The guy who wrote and directed it, he ended up in a bidding war with a couple of places, and Netflix apparently won the bidding war. And I'd never heard of it, and I just watched it just blindly, and I was like, surprised. I love when that happens. Justin, did you catch this one?
Not yet, no. Like Eric, I've been sort of catching up on some 1998 films, so no, I haven't caught that yet, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's really good. Nathan?
No, but like Eric, I love time loop kind of movies. Like I don't think I've seen one that I've disliked, honestly. So I would definitely check it out.
There's a recommend for you guys and everyone listening. So, but that's all I've seen. I mean, I've been so busy. I was lucky to squeeze that one in.
As the actress said to the bishop.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Joseph. So I haven't watched any films apart from the ones like Eric that I can't talk about just at the moment. But I've been watching a couple of. I'm halfway through 2 series on Netflix, 2 horror series. One is Archive 81, which was getting quite a lot of good press. So I thought I'd check it out.
Oh, sorry, Justin. I did watch the first episode of that, but you go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to spoil it apart from to say the premise is this guy is hired by a man, Martin Donovan, I think his name is, who, of course, was in, what's that, the PJ Souls movie, Innocent Prey. So a bit of a slasher movie connection there, right? Where the one where the phone calls coming from her hair. Remember that one?
Her hair is big in that.
Yes, it is big in that. But he plays kind of a owner of some shadowy company who hires this guy to go through a box of videotapes that were taken by a woman who was making a documentary about an apartment block in New York under the guise of doing the history when she's actually trying to find out what happened to her mother, who disappeared many years before. And so he's kind of watching the story kind of unwinds while he's going through the tapes, cleaning them up, and then watching it. And then I won't spoil it basically because it's I'd say any more possibly would spoil it. It got a lot of good press. I'm about 2 from the end now. I think I've got 2 more to watch. I'm enjoying it, but it's a shame that it's surprisingly uncreepy. I thought it would be a lot creepier than it is, because if you remember like a film like The Last Broadcast, which came out at the same time as Blair Witch Project, and there's all that hoo-ha about who came first and all that kind of thing. But in that, the essential premise is cleaning up a videotape to try and work out who the identity of the person on the videotape is, and they spend almost the whole movie doing that. Whereas in this, it's everything is, I guess it's to do with modern audiences that, unsurprisingly, he sees things on the videotape, including kind of faces that come out, but they look like kind of PlayStation 2 boss monsters, or alien greys poking out. So there's no subtlety to it, which is a shame. I kind of would have liked a bit more, but you probably saw that actually if you saw the first episode, Joseph.
Yeah, and that's not really my problem with the show. I just found it so blasé. Like, there's no urgency whatsoever. And I know it's just the first episode, and I shouldn't expect, I should. I think the first episode really should wow you, and this really didn't. I just feel like, I don't know, the guy doing all this work on all these tapes, it just doesn't feel real to me. Like, I know we're dealing with a supernatural show, but it just feels like all this stuff, the tech is so manufactured to the point where if you grew up with this stuff, you're just going to sit there and laugh at it. I know that sounds picky and, pedantic, but I don't know. That's the only entertainment I could get out of that first episode was just nitpicking it. I just found the story kind of boring.
It's going to be worth sticking with. I'm going to get to the end of it because I want to find out what because there's some twists and turns in there. But what about you, Eric and Nathan? Have you seen it?
No,
I've seen the first 2 episodes. Wes recommended it, I won't say recommended. He thought we'd like it because he hasn't seen it yet either. We're kind of watching it together, and I liked it, but. And I'm going to stick with it because, like I said, I did enjoy it, but I'm kind of can see where you're coming from, Justin, in that I wanted it to be more scary, and I don't find it to be very scary. I mean, I'm interested, but I don't really find it to be that tense, and I thought it would be.
Well, I think one of the biggest problems is that the first series kind of not gives everything away. It's the first episode, sorry, not exactly gives everything away, but rather than going in there and getting this slow creeping realization there's something wrong with the people in the building, that everyone in the building's weird and hostile from the moment that she goes in there. So it kind of, and then you see this kind of thing in the videotape, this kind of being and things like that. So all subtlety thrown out the window. And then is stretching over 8 or 9 episodes. It just seems it would have been better if they'd kind of had a bit of more of a slow burn. If they're going to go for that kind of slow, methodical approach, but I'm enjoying it enough to finish it. So, but the other thing I started watching, which is complete opposite from slow burn, is the new South Korean zombie series called All of Us Are Dead. All of Us Are Dead. That's it. Which is basically the zombie apocalypse in a South Korean high school. And it has the kind of the scale that, and the kind of excitement and set pieces that was kind of been missing from The Walking Dead for donkey's years now. because I kind of gave up on The Walking Dead. I couldn't even finish the last series because it was just endlessly people schlepping around in forests talking about where they're going to find their next carrots, and then stabbing a zombie in the head every 5 minutes, and that was pretty much it on repeat. But with this, it's not, doesn't take itself too seriously, but it's like it says, you've got like a zombie outbreak in a high school, which spreads through the whole of Seoul. And even at one point, one of the students go, "This is exactly like Train to Busan." So essentially, although it's not an official companion piece to Train to Busan, it is very similar. And for a TV series, the set pieces are quite expansive and quite spectacular. There's a fantastic sequence where the kind of zombies break into the school auditorium while the students are having lunch, and like all hell breaks loose for like this kind of almost like a 10-minute looks like they hadn't single shot of kind of mayhem and fighting. And yeah, so it doesn't break any new ground. I mean, it probably, like a lot of people, probably got zombie fatigue, but this has got that kind of South Korean sort of pep and kind of weirdness and off-kilter and fun to it. But it's I've been enjoying it. It's about halfway through that at the moment. So one, any of you seen? I think it only dropped last week.
I have heard of it. I actually was going to watch it, but I chose Archive 81 instead. Now I think maybe I made the wrong decision.
Well, it's complete polar opposite of that. It starts for the first half, well, maybe a third or half of it is that kind of slightly shot-worn sort of high school sort of dramatics and sort of rivalry and love interest and all that kind of stuff. But once the zombie action drops, it does kind of really sort of go hell for leather for it. So yeah, it's if you're not completely burnt out on zombies, then you're quite happy to turn your brain off and watch it. Then it's one I'd recommend. So okay, well, if there's nothing left to say, then I guess it's time we buckle up and head to Death Valley. So Eric, what do we have the trailer for it? Do we?
Yes, either that or a TV spot. I can't remember what I sent you. It was quite a while ago now.
Okay, right. And you're going to bring us back in after this.
No one knows you. No one has ever seen you before. And no one will notice. When you're gone, Death Valley was a great place for a family vacation. Until the tourist business started dying. Death Valley, rated R.
Now playing at Birdcage, 49er and Sacramento Drive-In.
Ooh, I do like that trailer. It kind of does kind of explain everything for you, but I just love the narration. It's kind of a trailer you don't hear much of these days. You were saying earlier, Justin, that the film has a Kramer versus Kramer vibe, and that's one of the first things I wrote down for that opening sequence. As the credits are playing out, we see Billy with his biological father going around New York, and it's very schmaltzy. There's schmaltzy music playing, and there's lots of "I love you, son. You're the most important thing to me in the world." And then he's like, "I love you, Dad." And it feels like this is about as far from Friday the 13th as we're ever going to get. But once they get to Death Valley and the desert setting, it begins to resemble a horror film a bit more, bringing to mind, of course, something like The Hills of Eyes. I've said before that I love sort of brightly lit rural locations in slasher films. So if you think portions of Just Before Dawn, Friday the 13th, Final Terror, all really benefit, for me personally, from kind of the eye candy of the backdrop. And it's the same here, because I think they utilize this desert setting really well with its vast open spaces, and then the sort of nooks and crannies provided by the frontier town as well. The other early impression I got from the film is that Billy he's a bit of a little Justin at times. He's a bit of a nuisance, and he makes passive aggressive remarks to his mother and her new love interest. And I imagine this is what Justin would have been like in this scenario. Am I wrong? No, I'm not wrong. I think it's to Peter Billingsley's credit, though, that the character of Billy never gets unlikable, and he never gets to a stage where he disengaged from the film. I think he reins in the problem child shtick just enough so that we don't dislike him, and he mellows as the film goes on. As a slasher enthusiast, my favourite scene is it's quite early in the film, but it's the murders of the teens in the camper van, which is... It almost feels like it was shoehorned into the plot, because it feels like it's straight from an early 80s slasher film, whereas the rest of the film doesn't really have a slasher vibe to it as such. And, you know, there is that, I suppose, that scene, spoiler alert, that comes later involving Wilfred Brimley, that actually reminded me quite a lot of poor old Scatman Crothers in The Shining. And that scene is the biggest jump scare. It's not a jump scare as such, but it is a surprise. I mean, they don't play a big, loud, stingy noise like they would now if it was in The Conjuring or something. But it definitely caught me off guard, that moment. I think Billy investigating the deserted camper van is very well done. It's kind of tense. The scene with Wilfred Brimley and Stephen McHattie, where they're just exchanging pleasantries, but there's something bubbling underneath. I think that's well staged as well. And as with a lot of horror movies with kids at the centre, although it's kind of patently obvious that the kid in this is never going to be in any real danger, you do get the sense that the villain of the piece has every intention of trying to kill the kid. So there is a degree of peril involved that sometimes you don't get in films where kids are the central character. I mean, that scene in the Cowboy Museum where the killer is firing live ammunition at Billy. And, you know, and Billy thinks it's all a game at this stage because he's a bit of an innocent. Well, he's very much an innocent. I think that's really well put together. And I love the babysitter. I mean, she's quite comedic in the way she attacks the munchies left behind, you know, by the parents as a sort of goodwill gesture. You guys might find this really hard to believe, but I can really relate to this character. It's strange. It's a strange scene in kind of many ways, in that it's quite drawn out, but I think the actress does a really good job of making an impression in what's a very, very minor role. There's something kind of, it's an ASMR, it's called. It's some kind of fad about noises that are quite close up or something. I'm not quite sure what the purpose of it is. I see it on YouTube and that, but in the way it sort of focuses in on the scrunching of the crisp packet and the chocolate bar wrapper, it does, I don't know, it sends a little tingle up my spine.
They focus on specific frequencies of sound to kind of lull you into like relaxation.
Yes, well, this is what the noise of crisp packets and chocolate bar wrappers do to me, which you may find surprising.
I'm not surprised at all.
Hey, you should be. I'm very svelte. I thought, and it's quite a shock when she meets her tragic end, although it is quite apt that it happens at a Coke machine where she sees a free Coke up for grabs, and of course that's her downfall. So on the surface, the film, I suppose, could be viewed as maybe being a bit slow, but I kind of enjoy its mix of slasher, although it is quite, as I said, it's not a slasher in the Friday the 13th mold. It doesn't have that roller coaster ride feel to it. It's family drama. It's a kids in peril action movie. It's, I suppose, a serial killer movie. Again, it's one of those films where the identity of the killer is revealed kind of early on, although there is a slight twist towards the end. But again, that twist is kind of telegraphed earlier on as well. But yeah, so it feels very different to a traditional early 80s slasher, but I think it's pretty good. I mean, it has a certain repeat viewing factor for me. Probably not as much, well, definitely not as much as, you know, the Halloween or Friday the 13th movies or My Bloody Valentine, but I still think it's really good. I only caught this one quite late. I think I only saw it maybe in the late noughties for the first time. It had bypassed me completely back in the day, but yeah, so it's a thumbs up from me. Just don't go in expecting Jason or Michael Myers, because it's a different kind of film to that. But if you can get it, the Blu-ray from Scream Factory, it looks stunning. It looks terrific. So Death Valley, who will I go to first about Death Valley? Nathan.
Yes, Death Valley. I had seen it a really long time ago, but I didn't remember much about it at all. So I was almost going in like brand new to when I watched it this time. And I definitely agree with you. I think it's really good. It's not particularly scary because, like you said, I never really felt like Billy was in danger. I mean, he was, but I never thought that they would kill him, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But like it's got some great moments in it, like you said, when he's investigating the RV where the teenage couple have been killed. It's a pretty tense sequence because you keep expecting him to come across the bodies or the killer or anything. One thing about that babysitter though is I definitely paid attention to those rappers, because I'm like, if I'm Billy and I'm trying to watch a movie and she's making all this noise, I'm gonna be like, can you like, I don't know, like find a bowl and pour them into it or something. Okay. I don't want to listen to your crinkling rappers while I'm trying to watch a movie. I love the scene where the killer is kind of doing this dance on top of the roof while Billy and his mom and his mom's boyfriend are inside. I thought that was an interesting choice.
Jason never did that, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't remember Jason ever dancing on a roof, or Mrs. Voorhees. Although, wouldn't that be something if Mrs. Voorhees had been dancing on the roof?
That would have been awesome.
Yeah, it would have been. But yeah, like I really liked the characters, and Billy. He could have been super annoying, but he wasn't. I mean, like you said, he was kind of passive aggressive in the beginning, and I could see why the mom's boyfriend was very annoyed with him. But he does mellow out, like you said, and he, like. He's got bigger fish to fry once he's being stalked by a murderer. And I thought it was interesting too how the murderer, when Billy is hiding or not hiding, but he's like locked himself in the bathroom, and the killer's basically just explaining like how he's going to take the door down. It's just, I don't know, it's very odd but interesting odd. And like you said, the Wilford Brimley scene, I did not see that coming whatsoever. So that was kind of a huge shock. And like you said, it's not a jump scare. It just comes out of nowhere. Like you don't expect it. And then it just happens. And it's just like, whoa. I mean, I definitely did not see that coming. I do like the scene in the museum where he is firing real shots at Billy. And, of course, Billy thinks it's Black Bart and it's all make-believe. And, unfortunately, he is very much incorrect about that. See, that's all I got written down here. Like I said, I did enjoy the movie a lot, and it's definitely worth watching for sure. I just don't expect your typical slasher movie. It doesn't follow the typical formula.
Thank you, Nathan. Joseph.
Yeah, I enjoyed Death Valley with maybe one reservation. I'll get to that later, but I was watching and quickly I realized this film wasn't going to do much with the Peter Billingsley character except make him look pouty and place him in kind of manufactured danger at random intervals. And I guess that's okay, because much of what makes this movie work as well as it does is kind of strong enough to kind of supersede all that mopey commercial nonsense. The reveal of the identity of the killer brings to mind something like, I guess this is a spoiler. I mean, we typically spoil these films, but something like Just Before Dawn. And it was a twist I don't really remember all that well. So it kind of threw me for a loop watching it again. I love the bits where the kid is exploring the RV just after the opening murder, or that double murder, or I guess it's a triple murder. And we're never quite sure if he's going to be caught by the killer. But as Nathan said, that scene with Wilford Brimley nosing around the killer's house. And then, wow, that surprise pickaxe just comes out of nowhere. Another spoiler. It's a very effective suspense sequence, I think, especially just like when he's eyeballing that door and he notices all the scuff marks on the door and it looks like there's been some goings on over there. You just don't know what's going to happen, and it's really well done. I think the desert style locations are all, excellent and used to great effect. And the killer is memorable for the sheer fact that a pendant provides clues to his identity and motivation, and
a frog pendant, not just any old pendant, a frog pendant.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that, and he's fairly menacing under that scarf and Stetson, all things considered. I Death Valley ultimately is kind of one of those in one ear and out the other type of movies, but I think it handles being such an endeavor, or I think it handles it, quite well. I think it stands toe to toe with maybe certainly some of the second or third tier picks from this era. I would, kindly rank it alongside stuff like Slaughter High or The Prowler. I think it's just as good. It's fluff, but I had a good time with the film overall. It would have worked just as well, I think, without Peter Billingsley at the center of it all. I think they could have easily written around his character. I don't think that the whole kid in danger, which is a trope that I don't really care for, was needed here. I think there were plenty of avenues they could have taken that would work better. And that was probably my one lone issue. Actually, my other lone issue was that Peter Billingsley, he seems more, I don't know, he seems more like I said, mopey or just kind of, smart alecky. He doesn't have that kind of Kevin McAllister edge where he's going to hurt the killers like he hurt the burglars in Home Alone. I think he just needed that kind of edge to him. He just always seems like a manufactured child in danger, and he doesn't really have much of a personality beyond that. But overall, I think the film is just a lot of good fun. Has some good surprises, good scenery. I mean, yeah, it's perfectly watchable, perfectly likable. Thumbs up.
Excellent. And were you okay with the crisp bags and the chocolate bar wrappers crinkling?
Well, that whole scene is kind of wow. It's kind of cringy, but I admit I did laugh. But all that noise, wow.
Justin, while you're giving your review, I'm just going to eat these potato chips, if that's okay.
Well, I don't know. I've a not complicated relationship with Death Valley, but I find it's a bit of a schizophrenic mess in a lot of ways. It feels like it was it feels like a film that was kind of tampered with either before filming or after filming, because I won't get into lots of background, but my understanding, well, it was filmed at the tail end of 1980 by Universal, so it kind of feels like it was Universal trying to get its slice, no pun intended, of the kind of slasher movie pie on the kind of box office that Paramount was seeing with Friday the 13th. And I think Universal, they did put out a Halloween 2 as well. Halloween 2, I think, was a Universal production, which kind of obviously was the biggest slasher movie box office-wise in 1981. So it kind of feels that this was kind of it was like a real mishmash of borrowing bits from Steven Spielberg's Duel from 1971, The Car from 1977, borrowing bits of the slasher movie. Then you got the Kramer versus Kramer, and the kind of family drama, the kind of travelogue thing of driving through Death Valley, going to these different locations. It doesn't quite fit. None of it kind of it doesn't really gel together as a kind of coherent whole. For me, it's strange. Like when you're thinking a film that was trying to ape the success of Friday the 13th starts with these kind of weird, almost like TV movie-esque titles, very functional titles. And the soundtrack is kind of a classical musical soundtrack intro. And then you have, like you mentioned, Eric, at the kind of beginning, you've got Edward Herrmann as Billy's father, who's in this kind of weird Kramer versus Kramer thing, which of course Kramer versus Kramer had been one of the biggest films in 1979, so the year before this was made. But then it literally is a cameo. You never see him again in it. So you have this kind of weird disjointed feel. I mean, the scene in the trailer with the young couple, there's three of them, and she's wearing a boob tube which gets pulled down, and a bit of boob fondling goes on, which is pure exploitation, fantastic early 80s exploitation. And then they get murdered. The killer just reaches in while she's having a boobs fondles and picks up the knife and then cuts the boy's throat, and then you don't actually see what happens to her, but obviously she gets killed as well. Is very much like it felt like someone had said, right, we need some Friday the 13th style killings, teenagers, bring teenage audience in. But then the film is this kind of sort of 30-something kind of family melodrama running through it as well. So it just feels like it was a film that perhaps started as more of a thriller, and then Universal said, right, we need to make it more of a slasher movie. And so it felt a little bit of a Frankenstein's monster. Overall, I mean, those bits I kind of, I enjoy it. I think it's a fun film, but for me, it's a bit like kind of wallpaper kind of movie. I can look at it and enjoy it, but not. It doesn't leave much of an impression. I mean, some of the towards the end, the couple of effective moments, like the lights going off when they think they've killed the killer, and it turns out the other killer. There's two killers. One of them is his twin brother, which we've already spoiled. And I wonder if that was kind of an inspiration for some films like Scream going forward, of having that kind of the second killer sort of coming in. With the lights going off was kind of creepily effective. And I was talking about the babysitter. I did admire her restraint that when she went to get a banana boat ice cream, she only got one, didn't she?
Banana split, yeah. But she's eating it on the way back.
I know, but she showed restraint by not buying two.
True.
But also I kind of thought, how bad is that? If you're a babysitter, at least she gets to eat all the chocolate and the crisps before she dies and has a big guzzle of Coke. But then they run past her, no one finds her, do they? So that's quite a sad end, really, isn't it? When everyone's running around looking for Billy and they run past her.
She had a family.
And loved ones.
And I thought she wasn't, I don't put it delicately, she wasn't the smallest of people. So she would have been quite easy to spot.
Hashtag cancel Justin.
But, overall, it's kind of, there's bits in it I really like. But for me, again, it feels like a bit of Frankenstein's monster. I don't know. It's kind of, there was that kind of weird the thing in the early 80s. There was that kind of some soap opera-ish things came into kind of some slasher movies, certainly ones from the kind of the major studios. And I think once you understand what it's doing, you can enjoy it. But for me, I would have enjoyed it possibly more if it had been more of a straight-ahead slasher movie, and it kind of upped the exploitation aspects a bit more, perhaps. But overall, yeah, it's a sideways fun for me. It's not up or down, but I kind of I'm glad we've finally covered it, at least.
Well, I like it. One question then. Okay, we've spoiled this, that there's two killers. They're twin brothers. The Wilfred Brimley murder gives away the fact that there is a second killer. They don't give away his or her identity. But do you think the film might have benefited from not indicating there was two killers?
Yeah, I think they probably could have figured out a way to make that Wilfred Brimley scene work without revealing that there was someone else there. I think the reveal would have worked a little better had we not known that there was another person there. But still, I think it's very unusual for the time, and it really did remind me, like I said, of Just Before Dawn, which came out 2 years prior.
Just Before Dawn came out in 1981.
Yeah, or a year prior. Okay.
Yeah. Also, Hell Night, of course, does the same thing.
Yeah.
Gosh, we're spoiling all the classics now.
Well, we've already covered these, so why not? Yeah.
Yeah, and also Friday the 13th with Pamela and Veronica Voorhees.
Yeah, that's right.
Twin sisters.
Wow.
And one of them dances on the roof.
Yeah. I want to see this alternate dimension Friday the 13th that's directed by Nathan Johnson, where Veronica Voorhees dances on the roof.
You can imagine it like tap dancing. That'd be scary, wouldn't it?
Do you know who was a very good tap dancer? Farrah Fawcett. Tap dancer. Farrah Fawcett.
No.
Yes. You okay, Justin?
Yeah, I'm just, I think I might have had a little stroke. So, anything left to say on Death Valley, or do you want to move on to some background, Eric?
Let's move on to background.
Okay.
Nathan, do you have any background?
Yes.
Oh.
Sybil Shepherd was considered for the role of Sally, and it ended up going to Catherine Hicks. That'd have been interesting to see her in that role, even though I thought Catherine Hicks was great. It was released in U.S. theaters in 1982, but filmed in November of 1980. And Peter Billingsley's follow-up movie was, of course, A Christmas Story. And in both films, he mentions the Western outlaw Black Bart. I recognized that when I was watching it because I've seen A Christmas Story many, 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 many times. But, yeah.
Excellent. Joseph, do you have any background for us?
Yeah, Death Valley was released to the home markets here in the States around, I think it was November of 1982 via MCA. Is in your standard slipcase, and to my knowledge, this would be its only release until a DVD release back in 2012. And not sure who put that out. Was it Shout Factory? I think.
Maybe? The Blu-ray, yeah.
Yeah,
Shout
okay.
Factory, yeah.
Okay, yeah. It was. This is really interesting. It was playing on cable at least twice a day in some instances as early as August of 1983. To my knowledge, most of the paid cable stations are kind of static showings, meaning a showing in Los Angeles would show here, etc. So I got this this info out of Granite City, Illinois, where it played at 5 p.m. Central, and then again at 10 p.m. Central on August 5th of 1983. Though I couldn't quite determine what station it was during this run, but being so close to its release year, my guess would be like HBO, which means it was probably playing pretty much nationwide at that time on TV twice a day. It played again in Granite City on April 16th of 1985 on Channel 24 at 2 p.m. Central, and then Channel 24 again on April 21st of 1985 at 7 p.m. Central. It sounds like a regional channel, so I'm not sure if it would have been in my neck of the woods, but very popular in Granite City, it seems. It played on the TBS Superstation. Nathan will remember that station. According to a listing in the Oakland, Maryland region on January 23rd of 1992 at 8 p.m. Eastern. TBS is another static station, so it was playing pretty much any household that had TBS. It appeared to be a part of, this is pretty cool, it appeared to be a part of his horror movie block, followed by the 1983 anthology Nightmares at 10 p.m. and then the 1981 Wes Craven directed Deadly Blessing at midnight. And TBS used to do a lot of exciting stuff like that back in the day. I can tell you, I mean, this movie seemed to be playing on as late as 1994 on cable stations in the United States. But one interesting little tidbit, this is the last bit I have here. I found that it was showing on A&E at 2 p.m. on November the 25th of 1994. And this is sort of answers that old House of Death mystery as to why that channel of all channels would air House of Death. I mean, if they aired this and House of Death, I'm curious to see, what other slasher movie titles I could dig up, if any, and find out if they too were cut as haphazardly as House of Death. I wonder if this was cut really bad or placed out of the reels out of order. Now I'm kind of curious to go research that. But yeah, I mean, it's a surprising amount of time spent on TV here in the States, and often with good company, it seems. But yeah, that's all the background I have on the film.
I don't recall it ever playing on television that I know of over here. Do you have any background then, Justin?
Yeah, as Nathan said, it was filmed at the tail end of 1980. And in November of that year, the Arizona Republic newspaper reported that Universal had taken over a suite at the North Phoenix resort, The Points. And the production was then heading over to film in Wickenburg, Las Vegas, and then Death Valley. The newspaper said that it was due for release the following spring of 1981. And the film itself didn't actually get a release to theatres in the United States until February of 1982, or February of 82. Catherine Hicks was, of course, went on to a genre fame in the original Child's Play later in the 1980s. She had previously been a Phoenix resident and saved Universal some money by staying with her parents during filming. The screenwriter Richard Rothstein drew inspiration from a trip to Death Valley, where he was approached by a car on the road, and he couldn't help but wondering what if the driver wanted to hurt him and his family. Presumably he'd also seen Jewel and the car. Hicks joked she was in the TV mini series remake of Valley of the Dolls in 1981, and in interviews at the time she joked she was big in valleys that year. I know it's almost up to one of your jokes, Eric.
Hey.
I looked up the director because he actually made some quite well received movies, and he was kind of seen as almost like the next big thing at some point in the 1970s. But on his own website, it was kind of quite humorously listed as it talks of Death Valley. It says this classic horror movie helped move the genre from its campy 70s era into a more sophisticated style. Even though the film was largely looked over domestically, it played to large audiences throughout the Far East. So interesting. It was kind of, I know a lot of slasher movies from the early 1980s, particularly popular in places like Japan. And many of them, like for instance, would have had, there was always those rumors back in the day that, getting to see the Japanese cut of The Burning or Happy Birthday to Me, and you'd see all the gore that had been cut out of the R-rated or the UK X-rated releases. Unsurprisingly, perhaps the film didn't exactly excite the critics, and there's a couple of little bits here. The Arizona Daily Star in January 1982, whereas obviously where the film was filmed around that state, said it called the movie a horror movie of sorts, is as terrorizing as buying frozen peas and just about as titillating. It says Death Valley is curiously passive filmmaking at best, but its major sin is the inclusion of gratuitous violence. There's no reason for it, but then again, there's little reason for the entire thing.
Excuse me, buying frozen peas can be terrifying if Mrs. Voorhees is operating the till.
Well, exactly. How do they know that wasn't going to be the case? Although she did have her head chopped off at the end of Friday the 13th, so maybe not.
Spoiler.
So a news pilot in February of 82 said Death Valley is an empty-headed, sometimes gory, oftentimes boring psycho thriller that have you snoring in your sleep. But also, amusingly, it didn't recommend Evil Speak either because it said it glorified Satan. So there you go. Starburst said, amusingly said that Death Valley is a killer with a knife picture as perhaps made by Walt Disney. It said it was tame stuff, a stalk and slash movie made by people who were wary of really making a stalk and slash film. A couple of last little bits. The Catholic Advance calls it unbelievably inept, but also classified it as O for morally offensive. And lastly, the Journal Herald said it failed as a horror movie and pretensions to be something else. It said it swapped sorority houses for the dusty splendor of the Arizona Death Valley, but it ended with said the old adage about the one substance you can't shine would seem to apply.
I was laughing at morally reprehensible.
Justin, I'm gonna have to take issue with something you said.
What's that?
You brought up that Mrs. Voorhees got decapitated. Now, as we all know, that doesn't mean anything because Michael Myers got decapitated and he's back. He comes back. I think they need to do a new Friday the 13th with Alice and Mrs. Voorhees, and it could be like a direct sequel to the first one.
I don't know. You've got a point with the whole decapitation thing, but I don't want to see anyone else in the Veronica role.
She was very well recovered from her decapitation in that end sequence in Friday the 13th Part 3, wasn't she, when she jumps out of the lake and pulls Dana Kimmel?
Yeah.
Yeah, she looked very intact then. I wonder if Jason kind of sewed her head back on.
But to be fair, though, in Halloween, which one was it? Not Resurrection. Was it Resurrection? Which one's the one, H2O, the one she chops her head off? I can't remember now.
Yeah, H2O chops the head off. Resurrection, it's back on again.
Ah, okay. But that wasn't Michael Myers, though, was it? That was the...
No, but as Nathan so eloquently put it on our Halloween Resurrection episode, it would have been less insulting if they just said that he stuck his own head back on and stitched it back together.
The Dana Kimmel scene at least was a dream sequence.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. So, I don't know. But they could do it in the same way as they did. What's that? Rubber. Do you remember the film with the killer tire?
Yes, I remember that.
They could have Mrs. Voorhees' head rolling around and biting people on their ankles.
I like this idea.
Yes, I think that this could go somewhere.
It could probably straight to the bottom shelf and the bargain bins.
Yeah. With Nocturne.
Yes.
Ha ha.
He got you.
So, Eric, anyway, that was everything I have.
Okay. Well, it's interesting that you said Death Valley, Arizona there in one of the press clippings, because I thought Death Valley was in Arizona as well. And Joseph, I think you said Nevada. You were closer.
It's California.
Yeah, it's Eastern California.
Yeah, when I was editing the episode, I was kicking myself because I realized it after the fact. So this is me correcting myself. Yay.
But it's near the border with Nevada, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so it's the northern Mojave Desert. Did you know that the record high recorded there was a whopping 57 degrees Celsius? That's 124 Fahrenheit. That's quite hot. I don't think I'd like to be sitting out in the sun on a day like that.
We've gotten close to that weather here.
Do you?
We've had like 115, 116 at one point.
Blimey.
Yeah.
That is hot. Peter Billingsley, we've discussed he was in a Christmas Story. Also in The Dirt Bike Kid, he was in the Burt Reynolds film Paternity around the same time as this one. A decade later, he appeared in Arcade, which I have on DVD, and I must rewatch it now to spot him. It was a Full Moon Pictures production. He's moved behind the camera then in more recent years. He's produced films like Elf, The Breakup, and Iron Man. He was the director of the comedy film, in inverted commas, Couples Retreat. and he was recently in front of the camera again. He had a role in Spider-Man Far From Home, which was 2019. It's not the most recent one, but fairly recent. And he's currently, did we say he's currently in pre-production to produce and star in a sequel to A Christmas Story, which takes, I presume, 40 years later.
Wouldn't that be in the 80s? Because the first Christmas Story was set in the 40s.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. Wonder what he'll be after Simon, like, because he plays Simon a lot in Death Valley.
I have one.
Oh, and they're great for your brain and for your mental health powers or something. Yeah. They use, actually, Simon is also used. Simon is also used. Can you name the other fairly recent horror film where Simon is a main plot point?
Pod People.
Was it?
Simon Says.
Oh, what? Why? Is it in Simon Says?
I don't know.
Was it in Pod People?
No, this is from more recent times. It's actually a significant plot point in Paranormal Activity, the Marked Ones. That's how they communicate with the dead, is through Simon. There we go. On the commentary track, now the only extra on the Scream Factory Blu-ray, apart from trailers, is a commentary track with a director who doesn't have a great deal to say about the film. There is a moderator on there who is trying their best to extract information out of him, but not very successfully, unfortunately. But he did say that Stephen McHattie was a very late replacement for another actor who they had started shooting with, but then they felt he wasn't quite right, so they let him go. So it was kind of like Eric Stoltz on Back to the Future kind of scenario. Now, he can't remember the actor's name, so I'm assuming it wasn't anyone who went on to great success and became famous or anything. Dick Richards, the director, the same year, he was one of the brains behind the Oscar-winning film Tootsie, which reminds me of my brilliant joke from last week. Remember I said it and you all thought it was hilarious? It was like, what do you call Dustin Hoffman in a black veil? And the punchline is Tootsie and the Banshees. That's brilliant, isn't it?
This is sort of like Facebook memories. We didn't like it then. We don't like it now.
Rude. The writer and co-producer Richard Rothstein, he also wrote 1979's Human Experiments, which is still a film I've not seen. He later went on to write Universal Soldier, and if anyone's going to like Universal Soldier, it's going to be R. Joseph. Am I right?
Oh, I love Universal Soldier. It's so tacky and trashy. It's great.
Yeah. And Richard Rothstein, he also wrote the TV movies Invitation to Hell, which was a Wes Craven one, and Bates Motel, which was the 1987, I think it was a pilot for a TV series that never happened. So I think that is all. Oh, I had one additional review. Did you do the New York Times review, Justin? It just basically said the director is Dick Richards of Farewell, My Lovely and March or Die, and his aptitude for horror is virtually nil. So they didn't like it either. But that's all the background I have.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, Joseph, what was the consensus on the Facebook group?
A total of 21 comments this week, and from that, our good friend Amanda Reyes writes, I love it, but that part about the killer luring the overweight babysitter to her death with junk food is sort of offensive. Rolling on the floor laughing emoji, but it's solid for the most part, and Peter Billingsley is so adorable. And Dave Felter says, mildly diverting, but not altogether successful, worth a look. And I just realized we've met both of them. Have a listen on pretty much all relevant platforms. Yeah, even that one. We're also on Patreon if you feel like supporting the show. We much appreciate your generosity. A huge thank you to everyone for the increasing popularity on YouTube of all places. We passed 2,000 subscribers about a week or two ago, and we're nearing 2,100 already. So thank you all very much. Questions and general feedback, that's thehysteriacontinues@gmail.com.
Excellent. Okay, well, again, thank you. And we're going to be recording our next Patreon off-piste episode on the horrors of Romy and Michelle's high school reunion massacre.
Romy.
Oh, Romy. What did I say? Romy.
You said Romy, yeah. She's not a CD-ROM.
So, if you want to join that, but we're also doing, we're working our way through towards the end of the 1990s, a top 3 of our favourite horror movies. Mostly ones we haven't already covered on the show. of the 1990s. And I think we're going to be recording, so as Eric said earlier, 1998 later this month. So do check that out. So I guess it remains to be seen what we're covering next time. So I think you're up next, aren't you, Joseph?
Hey, you've forgotten the most important part of the podcast.
I was saying, let's just go ahead and end the show. Goodbye, everybody.
Hey.
Oh, Eric, how could I forget you? How could I forget you? What's your name?
It's my joke of the week. It's so freaking fantastic.
What do you get if you kill someone in Death Valley? You get your just deserts.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry.
You should be. The storm is on the horizon.
Didn't mean to.
So, what are you covering next time, Joseph?
Well, we're going to go back to the glorious 1970s, 1976 Italy, in fact. So we will be covering The House with Laughing Windows.
Did those windows hear my joke of the week? Is that why they're laughing?
This is a long overdue listener pick from a forum member, Derek Taylor. Yes, that's why they're laughing, Eric.
It's not The House of the Crying Windows, Eric.
You're so mean to me.
So, but yes, well, that will be a really interesting one to cover. It's, it's been a long favourite of mine, so it'll be interesting to see how much it fits into that giallo mould, because I know there's some discussion about whether or not it really is a giallo or not, and I'm sure we'll weigh in on that. So, good pick, Joseph, and thank you. Is it Derek who chose that?
Yeah, Derek Taylor. He's a forum member.
Excellent.
And just a slight hint for all you guys, my next choice is going to be the polar opposite.
The Shed with the Crying Door.
There you go. I should have made that movie in the 90s.
Yeah, still time. What are we playing out with, Eric?
Oh, okay. Well, this is a song I'm not familiar with it at all. I know the band, I don't know the song, but I'm playing out with Death Valley 69 by Sonic Youth.
Good choice. Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Eric, and thank you, dear listener, for listening. So we'll be back next time for a slice of Italian gialli from the mid-1970s, and we'll play out Sonic Youth. So, thank you for listening, and thank you for your support, and I hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll catch you next time. So say goodbye to the good people.
Bye.
Goodbye, indeed.
Bye.